This is Kim Guzman. Learn Drop Stitch Crochet is my latest book published by Annie's Crafts. You can find it on their website below in both hard copy and PDF download. I've had many questions about this technique because it has similar mechanics to broomstick lace. Yes, you use a knitting needle to create the loops as in broomstick, but it's not actually broomstick. You can do far more with this technique than you can with broomstick lace. It seems that the most popular project in the book is the Vanessa cardigan, made in Plymouth DK Merino Superwash. You can see that there is a lovely stitch pattern created with the drop stitch, and you'll be happy to know that this cardigan has the barest minimum of seaming, only a few short inches at the bottom of the kimono style sleeves. Morel is also a popular design, made in flax by Vibra Natura. The linen yarn may feel unusual when stitching, but it creates the most extraordinary projects once it's been dipped in water and blocked. With the drop stitch technique, you can create shells, as shown in this tank top made in Plymouth Clio, a mercerized cotton. This shows the completely unique nature of the technique and where the broomstick lace technique ends and this one begins. You aren't able to stitch into the same spot when working in broomstick. The Sultana's cap and scarf is an excellent example of drop stitch crochet worked in the round. Yes, you can work this technique in the round with beautiful results. And if you're wondering about the names I've chosen for these projects, believe it or not, they are all varieties of grapes. I was researching grape varieties for my garden at the same time as I was planning the book. They had such beautiful names that I decided to use them in the book. Of course, I ended up getting the blueberry grape vine, which I didn't use that name in the book at all, and this was my first year getting grapes. So let's get started learning drop stitch crochet. Here I've done a row of single crochet and I'm ready to begin my drop stitch loops. Now you'll need a knitting needle and each pattern will indicate what size needle to use. All you do is chain, and you don't turn. You're going to begin working in the opposite direction now. Chain one, bring up a loop and place it on the needle. Now you see right away that is the difference right there with broomstick lace. You don't do that chain one with broomstick lace. And I'm going to be working in the back loops only. I just find it easier when learning to work in the back loops. The patterns will indicate whether you work in both loops, front loop, back loop. It won't matter, just work under the one indicated. And here I'm going to do back loops. And remember, back loops are the one furthest away from you. And you'll skip the first one because that's the loop that you have already there. So skip that one. Now go into the loop, pull up a loop, now do a chain one. If you've been doing broomstick lace, you may find yourself not doing that chain one, just out of habit, and it may take you a little bit of time to get used to it. So chain one and bring up a loop. Insert your hook, bring it up, now chain one and place it on your needle. You don't have to worry so much about cinching each loop here, because when you start to pull up the next one it will usually cinch that up for you. And make sure that you're pulling the loops up and you're placing them all the way down past the point of the needle. If you place them up here, it'll start getting really tight. So make sure that you have the full width of the needle there. Insert your hook, chain one, pull up a loop, and place it on your needle. And with practice, this does get quicker. I think the biggest problem will be trying to find a good position to place your needle, because you're holding it in your opposite hand here than you're used to. So that does take some practice, and you will definitely want to practice this technique with a small swatch like I'm doing here before you go on to the bigger projects. The linden scarf from the book is a perfect project to practice. And I made it specifically that way so that you could practice on the linden scarf before moving on to the other projects. Now you're going to do that all the way across. Now this technique, I actually saw this technique in a book published in the 1970s where you chain and then extend a loop, but it was actually for fringe, and it was suggested that you make fringe in this fashion. Of course, I thought that that would be very funny, because once you cut the fringe on the top, that's not going to stay. There's no way that's going to stay with that little bitty chain there. It's just a little knot. This is just not going to happen. But after I thought about it a while, I thought, well, I can do it in a different way. Let's see what happens if I do this. And that's how the book came about. Now, as always, I do suggest that anytime you're working in one loop, the last stitch of the row, work under both loops, just for stability, because that last loop can get really loopy. Now this is the last one. When you're learning, always count your drop stitches to make sure that you have the same number as the initial number of stitches. Now here's the neat thing here. Once I have all my stitches here, I can just take them off. Those stitches are not going to go anywhere. You could, I wouldn't suggest that you take this piece and put it in your project bag for a couple of weeks with these live stitches here, but you can certainly see that they're not going to go anywhere when you're working on them. It's stable. The only one that's a little less stable is the first one, and you'll have to watch that one, especially when you go to make your first stitch. Now I'm just going to do a row of single crochet into these drop stitches. So I'm going to pull a loop up. Now let me show you that again. What I've done here is I have not tried to pull the loop through down here. No, that's not what I've done. I've pulled the loop and I have made my first slip stitch here way up at the top, not down low. Now I'm going to chain one because we're single crocheting. Chain one to begin a row of single crochet. Now single crochet into the same drop stitch. Now I've made my first single crochet. Now come over here, and sometimes the loops do get twisted here. Just straighten them out, flatten them out just to make sure that they're straight, unless the pattern indicates otherwise, because one of the patterns in the book has twisted stitches. Alright, so just flatten it, and then to make sure that it's not twisted, and single crochet. Single crochet. It's all you do all the way across. Those stitches, you could have an entire row of these stitches, and they're not going to so easily come out the way that they would with broomstick lace. They're not going to move around. They're not going to change lengths on you, because that chain at the bottom is keeping them stable. So yes, indeed, it does have some mechanics similar to broomstick lace, but it's not exactly broomstick lace. Let's just flatten it out. The projects in the book are all made from natural fibers. I find that natural fibers really do show the drop stitch really, really well. after blocking. Now we're going to do the last one. And now all I will do is simply make a chain and put it on my needle just like before, and just continue across. You could actually take this right here and just continue up, and you would have a scarf.